Hello. Welcome to the conference Culture Lab 21. Culture Center of Vojvodina has organized conference Culture Laboratory 21 since 2018. We discussed in this conference about the contemporary topics in arts and culture sector, which respond to the contemporary time today. The topic of our conference is the future of culture. And we have now very interesting and very significant participants. And there are Professor Darko Reba from University of Novi Sad, Technical University, Department for Architecture. He will talk about the future of art and culture in the cities. After that, Associate Professor from University of Sorbonne in Paris, Professor Jean-Michel Tabolin. He will talk about how we can improve culture management in France, in general in Europe. And after that, from European Commission External Action Service, Emanuele Marion, she will give us overview of how we will see the future of culture from the position of Brussels. And in the end, we have an artist, professor from University of Novi Sad and University in Belgrade, Professor Ivan Pravdic. He will talk about the contemporary drama, contemporary theater, art and culture in general. I will ask Professor Darko Reba to start with his presentation.
I hope that you see my screen.
Yes.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Darko Reba, and I'm professor at the Faculty of Technical Sciences, Department of Architecture and Urbanism. And I'm teaching the subjects of urban design. And on the beginning, I need to thank to Biljana and Dunja, who invited me for this very interesting conference and very interesting topic. And I always, in my lectures, thinking about the future of the city and the future which connect the culture and arts and is always interesting to explore. And I hope that this presentation will give you some overview of how we can think about the future of the city connected to the culture and art. This is some content of presentation. I, in the beginning, will talk a little bit about the antique cities and culture of them. Then the open urban spaces is mirrors of culture and art in every society. And then the culture and art in the contemporary cities, and we'll try to conclude something. From the earliest beginnings of the city throughout all the historic period, people always trying to incorporate as much as possible the art and culture in the houses, in the open spaces, on every settlement, and we can follow that in every historical times that always they want to embellish the space in which they live. And not just the purpose to make them more beautiful, but also to permanently mark the cultural and artistic level of every society. And when we go back to the history, to the Roman period, we see that these open spaces, this Roman Forum is full of artistic elements, not only the houses, which are artistically constructed and designed, but many sculptures, many precious materials. And we always think how these spaces really was in those times and how people live in them, how express the cultural levels and artistic pieces of art, of work. And we have many examples of reconstruction, and maybe we don't know exactly, this is exactly the Caesars Forum, and we don't know exactly how it looks, but we only, after their remains, we can imagine these precious materials, these sculptures which are on many places on open spaces. But fortunately, we have one space which is preserved for 2000 years, and when we go and enter in the Pantheon in Rome, we actually can feel this atmosphere of public space and this artistic approach about the constructing and about the feeling with the many artistic pieces, and this really expressed the Roman culture. And I think this is the best example of the space which is preserved from the ancient times till today to feel this atmosphere, especially when we look up and see the dome. This is the magnificent construction of 42 meters span, and this oculus maximus, which connect the interior with the exterior, with the sun, with the weather, and this is really masterpiece of architecture, of art, and I think and the culture as well. And when we see exterior, this entrance part with this very tall columns which need to be transported from Egypt to Rome, these are the granite columns, and their weight is couple of thousands of kilograms, and this is the really technological task how to transport them. And you can see here on this picture that this column needs to be a little bit higher, but during the transport something's happened, and because of that this whole pediment is a little lower, but it's happened every time in construction. Something strange happened during the process of constructing. And maybe the best example of connection of art and the city is the normally Pompeii, where you can see the really many public spaces filled with pieces of art, with sculptures, with buildings. But what is very interesting and important, that every private house is I can describe like a piece of art. Every wall in the really smallest bedrooms is some canvas for the art. So floors are in mosaics, always different, always very specific. And what is interesting for the Pompeii, we see the theater, and in Pompeii lived 12 or 14,000 inhabitants, they say, but in the public institution and the cultural institution, they have the seats for twice as much as number of inhabitants. And I think this is the maybe only time in the history, and I don't know the city which have this ratio of many places for people in cultural institution. And when we think about the open spaces closer to our days, we always see them as artistic elements of the city, and maybe the best place for the urban culture is the Campidoglio in Rome. We know that Michelangelo made the masterpiece of designing these open spaces. I have lectures for 2 hours explaining many elements, and this is the really masterpiece. And this is important that Bernini, who was the papal architect, he was very, and architects are very egoistic one in his profession, and he said the Michelangelo is good as painter and sculptor, but he's magnificent as architect, because the designing the open space with artistic approaches is very important task. And when we go to the other culture, to France and Place Vendôme, and we see the how one king wants to give to the people open space and exactly the express the order and the rules which he wants to make some expression of his time. And even today we can see many artistic pieces on those spaces, and this connection between ancient times and modern art is always interesting, because when we enter this space we feel the ancient atmosphere, but these contemporary artworks, they are making this interesting contrast and as well as connection with the past. And in Spain, we have the specific culture, maybe unique in Europe, to have the games with many players, animals. And this Plaza Mayor today is really the space for the expression of different kind of arts, but as well, this space is a piece of art for self. And some buildings can be perceived as well in many city spaces, but here is the very interesting example that whole facade is covered with the pictures. And what is the best idea and best topic for the artist is always the woman body. And you can see here that every square centimeter is covered with some artistic approach, and it is it expresses very high level of the culture of those times. And contemporary spaces can be, contemporary approach to the art can be interesting. This is, for example, this red cloud and this green circle completely changed the atmosphere of the public space, and people always like to have different elements in the urban areas. And when we talk about the contemporary cities and in what way we can use city to express art and culture, this is the question of this little presentation. And I think that we have two typologies of city spaces. We have built spaces, houses. I put as cultural institution because every house really in the city is one cultural institution. I always ask my students what houses are talking to you, how they talking to you, and when you stay in front of the house, what you can read and what house can express. They can express many meanings, many information, and exactly we read many cultural levels from different times reading the houses in the city. And then normally open spaces, squares and streets, they are always the areas for expressing some culture and some artistic attitudes. And many tourists arrived in the cities really to feel the culture of the some nation and some countries, because they want to improve themselves by those different culture. And I always like to stress this approach of Professor Jan Gehl, how we need to design the open city spaces in the future. First, we think about the life of the space, and what is the life, then culture. We need to think how to express culture. When we decide what life will be in those spaces, then we need to really define the space, and after that to fill this space with the buildings in that order. This is completely different than the order in modern architecture and modern urbanism, when we make the buildings and space around them is empty, and then think how to put life in those empty spaces, and it is always a very hard task. And when we think about life, want to express this life, I said before, with the culture and the art, and we need to connect them with the people, then to define the space, and most important, the scale and the location of the space for different expression of the art, and then to construct and build the city around, buildings around those spaces, and those buildings need to go out from inside to outside to express the culture and art on those spaces. And when that is happening, people are really using this place, and only thing which show the quality of the public space is the presence of people. We can design very interestingly, but if people don't use those spaces, we failed architecturally or urbanistically. But when we think about the connection of building and space, and for people who will use it, it is always good approach. We can show maybe like this, and it's Professor Gale expressed this approach for very interesting spaces all over the world. And this is the Copenhagen, the North Port, and when they kick out the cars from the public spaces, people are very happy to be there. And this is the ordinary space with the buildings with ordinary architecture, but these colors are very vivid, and people are, I think, happy to be there and to enjoy the connection with the water, with the open ground floors who use the space in front of the building. And this is the very specific culture. You can see that someone sitting in the cafes and restaurants, someone sitting next to the water, not need to pay for the drink or coffee or lunch, and someone strolling between the people, because we always like to see the people in the city. And when we think about the contemporary public space, we always need to think how to make the pavements artistically, how to make some elements. You can see here the very interesting benches, unique benches, and we always, we are now the capital of culture of Europe. On year 2022, but we make some spaces, but benches are always the same. And you can see here really interesting that this man who sits some kind of stage, maybe he can sing or play the music or something like that. And when we see the vivid color and interesting elements, it is always inviting us to participate, to be in that place, and to meet other people, and it's comfortable to sit or lay down, to stretch your legs. It is always good. This is one example from very famous Dutch studio of architecture in Taiwan, and they make the space with water. It is abandoned shopping mall and parking space, and they really make the space in which people are happy. When you see the children are using that space, it is always good sign that this is good design. And when you see the surrounding, you see how important this public space with very interesting artistic approach, and people like to use the space with the water. And some bench always can be something interesting in open spaces, and people, if it is designed good, people are using and using in different ways if bench is good design. And with our students, we practice this project of urban acupuncture, which is the transforming little spaces in the city to be the areas for socialization. And when we put the wood on the pavement, it is always inviting us, because it is warm, and it is we are very happy to touch the wood in the public space, because it is something which is very rare, unfortunately. This is an example from New York. It is ordinary stairs, but it is really interesting when you see, you can choose the level of the sitting in this space and see how people are very happy to use those spaces. Or most important and most interesting public space in New York, Times Square, when they kick out the private cars, you see how it is full of people. And then, I don't know, this blue color, is it the water, or is it sky, or is it ocean or clouds or something like that? But it is always interesting artistic intervention. And this is the Rotterdam in Netherlands, Shorebrug Plain. And this Rotterdam is the biggest harbor in Europe. And designers, when they design, they know that in harbor most prominent element is the cranes, and they make the lighting as very interesting cranes, and you can change the angle of the lightning by putting the coins in the machine, and everybody can change the lightning in this space. And you can see here two guys are dancing in the public space, nobody watching them, but I hope that they are satisfied, that they are happy that they have public space to dance. Maybe this guy and girl looking a little by passing to them. And we have different programs on that space. We put the grass, and then you can see the women who are enjoying. Or some building can be really masterpiece of urban space, because this is opera in Oslo, and you can see the buildings as public space. Buildings allow the visitors to have connection with the water, but as well to go up to have the magnificent views to the city, and even to stroll around and to meet other people, to sit and to spend time. And I finish with that cultural quarter in the Vienna, and this interesting plastic benches, elements, beds, we can call it very differently, and they use them for the different arrangements. Sometimes they are green, sometimes they are violet, sometimes they are blue in line, like train or some boats, I don't know. And sometimes they make the interesting arrangement. Last time when I was there, it was very hot, like that day in Novi Sad, and it was very hard to find the empty bench to lay down, to read the book, to eat or drink something, and it is always interesting. And this is some conclusions, which are very, very short. Throughout history, culture and art are always integral part of the office spaces of the buildings, streets and squares. Culture and art contribute that the city space is full of life, of people, and this is the main task of architects and designers, to make the space full of people. An important assignment is to incorporate art as much as possible in the reconstruction and development of open urban spaces, because they are the best way to represent cultural level of society or urban culture, which is very important. And I think today and in the future, we need the integration of all profession, because when we talk about the Campidoglio, in Rome, we know that Michelangelo in the Renaissance, in Manier's time, was uomo universale. He is the painter, sculptor, architect, engineer, and many other things. He writes the poems. And today we have professions who are very, very separate from each other. And I think that we need the integration in the designing of city spaces, and this will be my conclusion for this presentation. I hope that I am on time. I think 20-25 minutes
Yes, thank you, Darko. My short conclusion is that the future of culture in the cities is connection between life and space, make art in the cities. This is my short conclusion.
Yes.
Okay, yes, is it correct? Yes?
Yes, yes, you are.
Professor Jean-Michel Tobolin, please, you can take the floor and start with the presentation.
I'm trying to find the presentation. Just 1 second, please.
Yes.
I do not have access to the presentation. Okay, so maybe I will make without
So I will say that Professor Jean-Michel Tobolin is specialist for the culture management in France and generally in Europe.
Well, I don't seem to be able to. Very sorry about that. I could probably send it later.
Yes, you can talk.
Okay, so thank you so much for your invitation, and thank you to Professor Reba for reminding us of the importance of the arts in our society. So yes, it's an interesting topic, thinking about the future. I've been doing some prospective studies recently in the future of museums, the future of libraries, the future of cultural tourism. So it's a very specific moment that we're living now because of the pandemic, or the end of the pandemic, which forced us somehow to rethink many of the things that we thought that we were dealing with so far. So I think we have to have probably a new look at the arts, at culture, and at the issue of managing the arts. So it's fair to say that prior to the epidemic, the arts sector was already questioning the social and the business model of cultural institutions. In this presentation, I must say that I'm concerned with not-for-profit organization. I'm not dealing with the cultural industries, but I think because I think that there are some idiosyncrasies associated with not-for-profit institutions. So to give you an example, there was a big controversy about a proposed new definition of museums at ICOM, the International Council of Museums. So, and again, prior to the COVID pandemic. So people were trying to find new meanings and new ways to think at museums, because they thought that museums should be transformed because of the evolution of societies. So there is still a controversy going on, and we are looking for this new definition in the months or years to come. I must say that I share some doubts about the possibility of designing really convincing new business models for the arts. I'm not sure that before the pandemic or after, we clearly see new avenues for financing the arts, but possibly management can play a significant role. So maybe we won't have brand new business models, but at least we will have new ways at looking at the management of cultural organizations. So what are the new well, as I said, the outbreak, the pandemic offers somehow an opportunity of cultural institutions in order to be more meaningful to societies. And also we've seen maybe more clearly, during the outbreak that maybe there is a need to reassess the European model of museums and cultural funding, which had been criticized in the past at the light of the consequences of the outbreak in the US, where we see that a significant number of cultural organizations did suffer very much during the pandemic. This was also the case, obviously, in Europe, but maybe that's my hypothesis, at least, the European model proved to be possibly more robust and more resilient during this dramatic outbreak. So what has changed in the environment of the arts and culture? Obviously, we still have the globalization going on. We will see certainly international tourist flows coming back to our cities and to our countries. They will certainly come back because human beings will continue to have the desire to travel. So for the moment, it's difficult to access some parts of the world, but certainly, well, tourism will have to change, and tourism will change, but the tourists will come back certainly in great numbers in our cities. We are also affected by the global warming fight and the challenges of sustainable development. This has not changed, but it will be certainly more emphasized in the future. And then we have the new landscape for demographics, meaning in some country having the population aging, having to deal with immigration or new kinds of immigration, etc. And this is certainly something that cultural institutions have to. And then finally, we have the new technologies. Not that I'm convinced that new technologies will again solve all of our problems, but I see new technologies as a possible lever to encourage public participation, public interaction with cultural institutions, helping to offer more individualized kind of product or services to people, and maybe also helping out to co-construct cultural policies. And then there are some pressing, I would say, social needs. I think it's not by accident that people are referring more and more to DEAI concept, meaning the issue of diversity. Are we sure that our cultural institutions are diverse enough in terms of staff, in terms of collections, or in terms of programs, but also in terms of audiences. And then we have the issue of equity. Do we serve the various segments of the population equally? Are we sure that all our cultural institutions are accessible, not only physically, but also, I would say, psychologically, for people who are afraid of participating in the arts? So, and finally, what do we do to be more inclusive for people who, again, don't feel they should be part of the arts and culture? And as Professor Reba said, I mean, the arts are part of the fabric of society. They are to play a significant role. And I may maybe add something that is more specific to museums and the heritage sector, not to the performing arts, as far as I know. It's the unequal distribution of works in our various countries. I mean by that the hot topic of the possible return of some artifacts to their country of origin, being to Africa, South America, Asia. So it's a very important topic, this issue of restitutions, and we'll see what happens in the future. And what I also see as a major concern for the heads of cultural institutions is the ethical issues. So ethics, I think it's a very important topic as well. We have ethical issues dealing with board of trustees. We've seen that in previous years, I'm sorry. We have ethical issues related to sponsorship and philanthropies. And I may also add that we have some ethical concern with some, not all, but some branding policy. We see that particularly in very large institutions. So what may change or in the future is the issue of governance. How do we tackle these issues of this social issue, these ethical issues? How do we manage to give more autonomy to cultural institutions? How do we make sure to citizens? How do we make sure that they actually participate in the life of cultural institutions? Otherwise, we will have the same situation where only a fraction, which we must admit, only a fraction of the population, even if it's growing, participates in the arts, going to theaters, opera houses, auditoriums, libraries, museums, and so forth. Also, I think we should see that there are some imbalances going on in the cultural sector. For instance, if I take the example of the museum industry, what do we see? We see a kind of what I would call a two-tier system, a system where you have superstar museums or monuments who accommodate the majority of visitors, particularly tourists, I must say. And then we have other museums, all the rest of the museums who enjoy less financing, less visitors, less visibility, etc., etc. And my fear is that superstar museum and monuments will concentrate the bulk of again of the audience, of the finance, of the blockbuster events, etc., etc. I think we see more clearly after the pandemic the possible limits of commercial orientations based on the development of revenues in cultural institutions. Well, it's clear that it's debated at the moment. Not all scholars share the same view, but it seems to me that we've seen during the pandemic that there was a real risk attached to a model where the Oh, I think there was some.
We hear you, but not, yes.
Thank you so much. Yes, I was saying that during the outbreak, we've seen that there was an enormous decrease at the same moment of not only entrance fees, but also all kinds of earning coming from shops, libraries, restaurants, cafeterias. The fundraising was also very difficult. There was no room anymore for a blockbuster exhibition. So I'm very conscious that this model may work again in the future, but we've seen the fragility though of this model, because it's a model that is very much dependent on international tourism, and we see we are conscious that the crises are always possible. We have economic crisis, we have social crisis, we have security crisis with terrorism, and finally we have this kind of health crisis with pandemic. And coming back to the social issues with all those imbalances, that was challenge of trying to guarantee a larger social diversity, because at the moment we know that it's difficult to see a large participation of less educated and less privileged categories of the population. So we clearly have to deal with this issue. Otherwise, people will resist, and they might not be willing to continue to finance the arts. So what are the implications, in my view, on arts management? I think the management should play a even greater role in reaffirming the role, the mission, the values of cultural institutions. They have to emphasize the importance of the arts and culture, not only from an economic point of view, as a kind of instrumentalization of the arts, even though the arts may play a significant role in terms of economics, but apart from that, from an educational, social, civic point of view, and also from a quality of life perspective, like we've seen in the previous presentation. So management should be at the service of cultural institutions in many areas, in the areas of strategy, the management of human resources, marketing, with respect of the values, again, associated with the art, fundraising, but also the better integration of cultural institutions to cities and territories in general. So that could be some basic principle that could management could emulate. So to conclude, what I personally see after this major outbreak is the persistent responsibility of states, governments, and local authorities. Theaters, libraries, auditoriums, opera houses, museums, they will continue, whether we like it or not, they will continue to need public support. Support primarily from cities, from regions, and in some countries from the government. I think it's difficult to envision that we would function like cultural institutions in the US. We don't have the same history. We don't have the same institutions. We don't have the richness in terms of private foundations, rich individuals, and so far. So forth. And I think, as I said at the beginning, the European model is a very interesting one. I think I really think that US scholars should also look at the European system. Second consequence I see for the future of cultural institutions is the search for more, what I will say, resilient and sustainable forms of development, maybe based on more sober and frugal models. It's not that easy to say that in the context where cultural institutions suffer from a lack of finance, but I think it's the only way to look at the future with some confidence. We have to look for a variety of reasons, for financial reasons, for sustainable development reasons, for social reasons. We have to look for more sober, I would say, and frugal model for cultural institutions. And then we the final remark I would say is to stress the importance of trying to include a wider audience, more citizens, to be more inclusive. We are talking about such societies that are based on knowledge, on innovation, on creativity. So if cultural institutions have a role to play, and I'm convinced that they do have a role to play regarding those issues, we have to be more inclusive. We have to integrate more a bigger part of the population. So finally, my final words would be to invite us to take this opportunity, the opportunity created by the outbreak, to rethink the role of arts management in order for arts management to be more in a position to address those pressing issues, these ecological, social, and ethical issues. And thank you. for your attention.
Thank you, Jean-Michel. It's very interesting how you described so many issues that take at the moment management and culture in France and in Europe, and we all need to talk about this. We will continue with the also very interesting perspective. It's from the Brussels. Our colleague Emmanuel Marion will talk about the future of culture. Emma, please, you can start the presentation.
Thank you very much, Biljana. Thank you for inviting me. Good afternoon to everyone. Yes, it's very very interesting to listen to the previous presentation. I think there's going to be quite a few links with what I am going to say now. Can you see the presentation now?
Yes, we see.
Yes? Perfect.
Yes.
So I'm going to talk about what is very much at the heart of talks and discussions here in Brussels at present, which is to do with culture, inclusion, and the fight against disinformation. Just as a little bit of background, so I work for the External Action Service, which is the diplomatic service of the EU Commission. And we also are tasked to deploy the Commission's activities across the world. But, you know, I have to say that the contents of this presentation are my views, although, of course, I draw from everything that is going on here. I just wanted to mention before I start that I wrote an article for Biljana already that is called The New Normal and touches around artificial intelligence as a means to unlock opportunities to the creative and cultural industries. And the reason why I mentioned this is that it's going to inform a little bit the presentation after that. And I'm going to start with a bit of what is going on here at the minute. Well, there's been quite a few changes. You might have heard that since the 1st of April, the Commission has decided, well, after, of course, a long, almost a year of preparations, to delegate more powers to its institutions with and the executive agencies, with a particular focus also on education and culture, and the ESEA that becomes the European Education and Culture Executive Agencies. The idea is that they've proven already their efficiency, their coherence, and also they are greater flexibility. You can see that the new remit is that the agencies across European projects that connect people and cultures reach out to the world and make a difference working together in education, audiovisual and culture, but also citizenship and solidarity. Because we are going to see a lot about the role, the prominent role that culture is taking within a society, role of society and governance, and also solidarity and equality. So what that meant also, there has been increases in budget. They've regrouped some budget from the Commission, and so the ASEA has different portfolios, the major one being Erasmus+, and then the second one is Creative Europe, of course. And there's been nearly 30%, well, a little over 27% increase in budget for culture for Creative Europe. And also, as you can see, for the portfolio on citizens' equality, rights and values, been over the budget has more than doubled. And it's very interesting to see that these topics are getting more and more interlinked. And the reason for that is that we know better than I do that culture plays a really great role in inclusion, inequality, and also in safeguarding democracy. You might be aware that the Treaty on the European Union is quite self-explanatory about this, that the EU shall respect its rich cultural and linguistic diversity, and that they shall also combat discrimination and promote economic and social cohesion. It's been mentioned already that, you know, the creative sector has been in difficulty for a while. The COVID-19 crisis has put it particularly at risk. Everything that has been happening over the past few years has also had a big impact on the life of our fellow citizens. And that this impoverishment of the population also has a massive impact on their capacity to have access to culture. When we speak about 15% of Europeans that experience material deprivation, that's a huge amount. And that means that there are people that might not have the money or even the time. If, for example, you have to double job, you don't have the time to take part in cultural activities. Any kind of free time is not at hand for you. So, being deprived of cultural participation means that you don't have access to this feeling of community. That was listed as the top, culture listed as top factor in creating feelings of community, ahead of history, geography, religion. And we know that more than a third of EU citizens said that they don't participate at all in cultural activities. And that's quite worrying in the current context, especially the current political and geopolitical context, because what I would like to talk about today is the concern that we all have, and is touching every strand of society and every strand of activity, that is the disinformation wars that are being waged at the minute in the context of the Russia and Ukraine crisis, war, to be exact. But that was also the case during the COVID-19 crisis. There was a lot of disinformation that was deployed across the world. And culture, who has always been a kind of a warrant of democracy and information and freedom of expression, was not there to counterbalance what was happening at that time. So to make the link, this a little screenshot here from the website that was launched by the External Action Service, which is called EU versus Disinfo, and an article on how in Belarus there has been a ban, quite a number of cultural events, whether concerts, plays, but also there's been publications, everything, and not just in Belarus. That's one example where they have been banned because they were seen as being controversial, as being against state official theories, and how this is proving that culture has a really key role in society, and that the minute democracy is in peril, culture is on the front line of the attacks. So the aim of attacking culture is to silence opposition, to exclude specific groups, groups who might be seen as more forward-thinking sometimes, like young people, women, LGBTIQ people, migrants as well. The aim is to weaken democracy and to control lives and cause public harm. The main tools that are used as to spreading fake news, as you know, via social and traditional media. We have witnessed an increased attack on independent sources. Wikipedia, which has been set up as an alternative source of independent information against perhaps state propaganda, is now being reused by state propaganda in a way to infiltrate independent thinking. We've counted over 100,000 modified Wikipedia entries propagating fake news since the start of the Russian conflict. And as I just said, the simple, straightforward banning of cultural events. So this is very much at the heart of our conversations at the minute. I think this is what I'm really trying to here to make the link between culture as a vector of equality, information, respect, and the fact that at the minute there's another attack. It's another attack yet on the EU institutions. We've had the economic attack basically during the COVID-19 crisis, and now there is another threat, which is the ideological attack. And I think it had been a long time in Europe where we hadn't seen such an attack on culture and the arts. So you can see why in the EU institutions and in the global governance in the EU, they're trying to relink culture and society and its role in society, its role in inclusion and democracy, and putting culture back at the heart of these topics to reinforce and to use culture as really a means to counterbalance these ideological attacks. So it's going to be a big focus in funding, in events organization, and everything to do with cultural events for 2023. I mean, already it's a big focus, but even starting already planning for next year's event, there's going to be two major topics that are going to be really pushed forward. The first one is going to be equality mainstreaming. Equality mainstreaming means that really embedding the notion of that everyone is equal into everything, from activities, from creating policies, the legal instruments, funding programs in the whole field of culture. As I said, culture, the unique role to play in shaping knowledge, values, and beliefs, combat deeply rooted stereotypes, and also combat ideological manipulation. So the focus on equality, gender equality, LGBTIQ, people with disabilities, migrants' rights, all these things that mean that we are really working via culture for a really inclusive society, because when people's voices are shut down, it threatens democracy. If the whole society doesn't have a voice, then the society becomes imbalanced, and then we lose our capacity to be a true democracy. And the people who work behind this information have really understood that as well. And there's been a lot of attacks on women's rights. You know, we've been dealing with a lot of crises. For example, Afghanistan is really how you can see how a society can attack specifically women to impose as a way in for dictatorship. Russia has really been attacking LGBTIQ people as a way in to imbalance democracy and to control their society. We have a lot of issues with migrants, lots of disinformation about migrants as well. Fortunately, not people with disabilities, but these are often, though, forgotten in what we organize, in our discourses, everything. So it's important to bring them also at the fore. Basically, trust, empathy, giving people a voice, giving people a platform is what empowers them. That's what culture does, and that's how you create an equal society and a healthy democracy. If I will stay with Biljana after, I can share a lot of background information. We've got toolkits on equality mainstreaming for cultural institutions. There's quite a few things here that can give you the pointers and the tools to adapt this into your programs and into your project. The second big focus is going to be artificial intelligence and the fight against bias algorithms. You know that algorithms are really at the heart of social media and online news distribution. They are a really powerful way to give an angle or bias to everything that you are going to consume online. But it's not just about information. There's a lot of education, training, recruitment tools, home use tools that are algorithm driven. And behind those algorithms, there's a whole chain of people who are developing this coding of how information is going to be treated, what is going to appear first. And it leads to a lot of issues, such as it can be opaque decision-making, gender-based discrimination, every kind of discrimination, intrusion in private life, loss of data protection, even criminal purposes. It's endless. And there's been a lot of research done on this, showing that some very widely used tools are really biased, extremely biased, and really propagate this access to fake news, this real discrimination. So it's embedding itself, you know. On one hand, this fake news spreading by extreme organizations, and on the other hand, the platforms that allow it to happen as well. So what can culture do? First of all, the EU is starting to legislate. About this chain of people who are developing AI and algorithms, and about the responsibilities of each. It's very early days, but in the meantime, there's going to be a lot of actions that are going to bring this issue to the fore as a means of educating, bringing out knowledge. And cultural institutions can start also organizing events around this subject of how can we counteract this manipulation of minds and this spreading of disinformation, discrimination, etc. There's a few different types. That's why I mentioned my latest paper at the start, because I think it's a good tool to see how can artificial intelligence be used by cultural organizations as a means, not just a real activity per se, not just as a communicate within communication tools, but really by developing outreach platforms and like a whole different strata of a cultural activity. There's already institutions that have been out there and developed online tools and online cultural activities that have been very successful. It's important that this conversation also starts entering the policy making processes, especially in terms of at local level, at city level, at national level as well, of course. And then there is a program that is called the Adopt AI program, which is about ethical, it's an EU-based program as well, and it's about ethical, developing ethical artificial intelligence. So that's really very fast in a nutshell. And I don't know then if we have possibility for interaction, but you can always send questions or email questions. And I will be happy to take the conversation forward. And also some sources where you can find more information from the EU perspective. There we go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emanuele. It's very interesting to see how the Brussels can see all the issues of the culture and art sectors today. And I would say that is a conclusion of Emanuele from Brussels. It's some kind of similar like what Professor Jean-Michel Tobolin said about the ethical approach, educational, social development of democracy. Thank you. If anyone has a question to Emanuele, can ask now. Somebody has a question? Darko? Professor Darko Reba, do you have a question?
Oh, it is very, very interesting for me to see what are the issues of European Commission, and I don't have a question because I was enjoying it in presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Professor Jean-Michel?
No, I just have a wondering myself, because we always have this assumption that arts is necessarily good for people. So I questioning myself in a way, and other people here in this conference. Are we sure that the arts are necessarily, in a way, a tool for emancipation? I think we would love to share this idea, but I think the history shows us that the arts cannot necessarily combat injustice or violence or domination and so forth. So I'm really not sure about how we could see the arts, but certainly not necessarily as good in itself for every citizen. So how do you see it from the European Commission? Do you have this assumption that the arts is necessarily good, or it depends on the context, on the way you use the art, and sometimes you instrumentalize the arts. So how do you see that, Emmanuel?
Yes, of course, it's a very good question, and it could be exactly, that's the thing, it can be exactly the opposite of all this. Instrumentalization, I don't know, because we can always find instrumentalization everywhere. I hope it's not the case. I hope we are sincerely having a conversation of believers in the right and talking to the right people who can have a positive impact. The arts are indeed a lot instrumentalized by both sides, the dark side of the force and the light. It's somewhere where we need to be vigilant, and it's not a question of trying to influence the output either, because that's not the point. It's very important that this freedom of creation and this freedom of expression is first and foremost. This said, I mean, the role that culture has in the fabric of society is unique and recognized, but it only makes sense if it's part of a whole. It has really to be embedded in all those sustainability pillars that you mentioned as well, and it has to be a global common effort. Otherwise, it's going to be David and Goliath, possibly a situation again, and we all know. I think we all have this, as from a cultural practitioner, this little thing of thinking, well, we're not here to fix all your evils or everything that has been created not by us. So it's not a black and white picture, but I think what I want to say today is if these topics are something that are of interest to you, if they're relevant to you as well, of course, well, it's worthwhile maybe engaging with for next year and in your funding application, etc. Because I think as well, as a citizen, I believe there's really need for a group exercise their a bit of solidarity against what is happening, which is quite dark at the minute, and it's worth fighting against together. It's a bit idealist, but we need some of it as well.
Yes, the solidarity is very important at the moment in Europe and in general in the world. Thank you, Emanuele. And now in the end, we have a real artist, the man from the field, as I will say, a professor from University of Novi Sad, Ivan Pravdic. He will talk about the future and about drama and theater and the future of art in general. So Ivan, please start with your presentation.
Thank you, Biljana, and thank you everyone for this very interesting and inspiring conference with really crucial issues on the topics of the future and the present of the arts and the societies. And I will talk more generally about the function and the role of art and artists. Although it is only death that is certain in our lives, we are trying to plan for the future, to shackle it with our desire for progress, or at least consumer comfort. Belief in entropy and growth towards infinity rather than apparent mortality and birth as processes of transformation and evolution, causes catastrophic and apocalyptic scenarios that psychologically balance this progressive frenzy. Contrary to the blinded implementation of our outlined unrealistic plans, creative processes and inventions of the spirit are unpredictable, leaping, pulsing, and cyclical. In order to move forward towards the future, we should unite our will, our thought, and our heart, and be responsible. Respond to the question, what do we want to live for in the future? One of the most precise definitions of art given by Vladan Radovanovic defines art as spiritualization expressed through predominantly intentional structures, different sensory, morphologically, and technologically, which, with their meanings and form, aesthetically affect reason and feelings. Indeed, artist uses different types of signs and technologies more intentionally than accidentally. Artist acts on different, often more senses at once, and the effect of the work of art is multiple. There are several tactics how art uses its lack or too much intention and purpose. Firstly, art anticipates future history. With their sensitivity, artists can recognize currents of intentions and often hidden interests and motivations that determine history. Numerous works of art not only examine certain potential futures in public opinion, but also suggest and try different models of technologies and human coexistence out. Secondly, art describes consequences of the past. Aristotle wrote almost 2,500 years ago that history deals with specific events, and the tragedy, the art, with general ones, laws that cause something to happen. A deeper understanding of causes and intentions that drive social activities can most effectively be expressed through artistically complex ambiguities. Thirdly, art changes author, her, or himself. Emilio Betti recognized in his hermeneutics that the author's artistic request to himself to let the process of work change him enables the same effect on other people in general. This requirement that understanding presupposes ultimate vitality of the subject, the greatest possible development of individuality, is very similar to the requirement of Jerzy Grotowski that the role of the actor should be like a scalpel to dissect himself. Fourthly, art drives new events, whether it changes a person's mood through perception, whether it provokes thinking, whether it invokes certain emotional states by empathizing with the character, or whether it causes mental shock with its structure. Work of art consciously or unconsciously influence. Nicolas Bourriaud, in his Relational Aesthetics, in which he defines art as a state of encounter, writes that, quote, through a work of art, the artist begins a dialogue. The essence of artistic creation lies in opposition of relations between subjects. Each work represents an offer for coexistence in common world, and the work of each artist represents a web of relationships with the world from which other relationships will emerge, and so on indefinitely. The participative quality brings us to rituals. Ritual is precisely that superior notion to art, as well as science and religion, in which the observer participates in several ways. Ritual is a means of change. There are obvious differences between before and after the ritual. No rain, being unmarried, being married, alive, dead. Actually, rituals are being performed, which is very suitable verb, from the dawns of humans in order to change inner and outer circumstances. Being recognized and evaluated only by success or not of executed actions, rituals are the source of performative quality. Performative utterance is the concept that a language can function as a form of communal action and have the aimed effect of change. Since we live in communities, there are necessary taboos that enable its functioning. Yet fetishization and totemizations of these taboos create tensions, discomfort, conflict. So historically speaking, first shaman, then hero, after that holy actor or radical subject, takes audacious journey into religious or social taboos with usually catastrophic consequences. By playing taboos out alone in the place of other people, a hero is both honored and despised. Yet the willful artistic hero sacrificially and didactically harmonizes social and psychological tensions for others. On the formal side, proto-fascinating ritual derived hymns and collective dances, which are high mimesis. This started as efforts to harmonize actions through synchronizations, thus with synergy accomplishing more than with the plain sum of individual work. Social and artistic choreographies are echoes of these events, analog to the musical chord. On the other side, virtuosity of mime storytelling of what the audience haven't seen spawned out comedy, which is low mimesis. Throughout human civilizations, these processes have continually shaped various spectrum of forms. Societies change, create new taboos and totems, and the artist's task will always be the same: to change self and the environment, to show transformation here, in the specific space in society, and now, eternal now as the only real time. As drama, according to Hegel, is a depiction of contradictions, contrasts, and the opposites, theater and performance, then, now, and in the future, must not exclude both sides of dualisms imposed on us by some ideological division. The art shows us that the truth is never a single extreme, but the real process that is behind and that triggers and allows the creation of tensions and the transformations of these extremes. A performance is a game and stylization, a clear lie full of stage conditionalities, is best suited to show the truth, precisely because we know that it is a unique pretense and not a self-proclaimed demagogic, dogmatic mechanism that claims to be true. In front of the stage play, masks fall off in the audience because actors still act better on the stage than spectators in private lives. Consciously deceived by a play, it is harder for us to unconsciously deceive ourselves. Work of art teaches us life or hides us from life, that is, it hides life from us. The theatrical ritual is a common time for performance and audience. From the beginning of societies, it has been applying poems and dances, narratives of memories of heroic and anti-heroic endeavors. And more importantly, theater tells us how to make even fragments of events and mysterious characters alive, appealing, and powerful. How to structure a story that will induce emotions. How to illuminate vaguely feelings and change them in more unexpected yet probable ways. Whether we use classical stage, virtual reality, circus, social digital platform, town square, it is all the same, because these are only conditionalities that enable a specific game with the same goal: to attract attention, to challenge faith, and to enable change. Bertolt Brecht wrote nearly a century ago that theater has become a job for philosophers. Of course, for such philosophers who not only want to interpret the world, but also change it, realizing that changes on stage can and must change social circumstances. Throughout history, rarely have people been more alienated from each other, never more intimidated by each other and more suspicious of each other than they are today. Therefore, theater is a common space and time in which people of different ages, gender, social statuses, interests, occupations, economic power meet is particularly in danger. For the same reason, theater is especially important for the community to be re-established. For that to be possible, we need to know and decide what kind of life we want. It is easiest to predict a future as a dictatorship, because the powers of apparatus of repression are directly proportional to people's passivity. It is easiest to create a community of specialized ignorance, self-centered and self-important biorobots or demonic lowlifes. Being without a sense of belonging to the community of different, they are easy to be manipulated and managed by feeding weaknesses and imposing expectations. But in that case, we can no longer talk about artistic and social ritual that allows change by boldly encountering another, facing taboo, meeting the shadow. It is not hard to create fascinations, but what makes them more than ideological propaganda, glamour, or currently desirable discourse? When a performer performs mental or physical skill on the stage, that is, just a moment, that a person in the audience cannot replicate. We compose them by editing attractions, rhythmicizing harmony and counterpoint, ordering actions that Eugenio Barba defines as all relationships and influences between characters and light, sound, space, everything which directly affects viewers' attention, emotion, kinesthesia. Authors of the present and in the future are no longer limited to individual specialized media. They create in different media using various types of science and technologies acting on different senses. The most important questions that creators will answer in the future are: why do we create? What is the purpose? What social models we wish to show and try in front of and with the audience? And perhaps most importantly, what real and true necessity has propelled us to creation? New technology invites us to rethink and create new opportunities for better and more complete inclusion of observers, witnesses, art participants. The further we are from community ritual that address necessities of survival, the media will try to return alienated people to community and the nature in more complex, more aggressive, and at the same time more sophisticated ways. Bertolt Brecht, again, intended that art serves to teach, entertain, and delight the masses. Art serves. It is a means, not merely a result. Art must provide the knowledge, something that we do not know and which is unexpected to us. Art must entertain us with joy of game and enrich us with changes in feelings and mood. Theater achieves such a complex task with a living person in front of another living person by electromagnetic induction, which instantly transmits charge to the viewer. When we electromagnetically describe this process, it can be reproduced by machines and even computer algorithms. Inanimate objects can be animated to create and resolve tensions. They can provoke meanings and emotions. Algorithms can guide our attention by paying attention to our reactions. However, the example of a real person going through a change gives us a greater probability and credibility that we can change as well. And do machines know how to enjoy, or is it just the privilege of human beings? Will machines even simulate the performance and play theater to make each other feel alive? Will machines need people at all, or just as an audience? Future that will declare themselves utopian will not need drama, theater, ritual playing taboos out, conflicts and transformation of extremes. Utopias and their dystopian downsides do not want to question their own narratives and bring them to ultimate consequences, which is what true drama has been doing since its beginning. Aside necessity for change, I could conclude from presentations of all speakers today that both society and the art of the future will not be able to be separated from all knowledge. Theater and culture will include, involve, and integrate live ethics, behavior, as a performative act and an example of life as creativity. The new culture and art will have to combine and express knowledge, beauty, health, and fairness. We have at our disposal forms of the entire present history and future that are built with artistic experiments and wondrous works. Richard Schechner recognizes performance in political events, events of history, revolutions, religious ceremonies, rituals of sacrifice, demonstrations, public executions, congresses. Overall social life is burdened with aesthetics. The theater knowledge and techniques will be widely used in the future. The poetics of live performance and guiding human attention will be applied also in mass electronic media and consumer and ideological campaigns. Theatrical actions will benefit both marketing target groups and personalized virtual reality. But the future of creative theater will be creation of new societies without envy and divisions, but with acceptance and diversity. We will create new rituals by which we will consciously perform ethics, behavior, creative acts to overcome, firstly, fear, fear of true self, fear of each other, fear of community, fear of nature, fear of the finite, and the fear of infinity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan, Professor Ivan Pravdic. We have now so many views with different perspectives. I think that conference achieved the goal. We talk about the future of culture, and we have a few very significant conclusions on the future of arts and culture in general. Is there any questions for the Professor Ivan Pravdic? Somebody wants to ask a question? Questioning him? Emanuele? You are more in the art sector.
Maybe I could ask
Yes,
Ivan.
yes,
Modern societies like to emphasize the role of the art and culture, but in the end, don't you think that artists are marginalized in a way?
Artists as a kind of specialized professional group may be marginalized, but their work, their skills, their knowledge is more widely used than ever. And artists are present in politics, in governance, in media, in marketing. So artists create everything that we see, everything that we touch, every interface on our mobile phone. They try out and give suggestions to all algorithms that we use nowadays through artificial intelligence. So yes, the role of artists has drastically changed, and it's up to creative people to call themselves artists or not. But this creativity is something which is sprouting and being widely implemented, and it is more feelable in everyday life that there is, for me, at least for me, everything is more stylized and more artistic than ever.
Thank you for the answer, and thank you for all participants. I will want to add one thing, that we will make a book from these conferences that I will prepare from today and for the future, and all these publications will be published by Culture Center of Vojvodina on English and Serbian language, so that all audience can read it from Serbia, in general from Europe. Thank you again, and see you on some other events. Thank you.
And thank you, Biljana, for this initiative. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for all of you, and hope that we will meet in person
Again, yes.
Yes.
Live conference.